Hello, everybody. Welcome to Zone Defense. Be sure to follow us on Spotify at Zone Defense Podcast, on Twitter at Zone Defense Pod, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Zone Defense Podcast. And be sure to ring that bell to get post notifications. Also, hit that like button and drop a comment down below and let us know your thoughts on today's topic. Today, Chris and I are diving into part 3 of our NBA preview, breaking down the Southeast Division. How's it going, Chris?
Yeah, it's going well, man. I'm really excited to get into another division here. This is a division with a lot of exciting players, a lot of changes, a lot of optimism, and some pessimism. So I'm excited to get into it. Think all these teams have some more interest. They're not the Cleveland Cavaliers, so I'm absolutely fine with talking any of these teams.
Yeah, I think this is because the Atlantic, they had a bunch of title favorites, but this division, I think, might be the top to bottom, the most solid division, because the other division had the Knicks. Central had the Cavs, obviously. I think all 5 of these teams have a good chance at reaching the playoffs. I do know you're lower on the Hornets, though, so I'm interested to hear your takes on them once we get to them. But to start, we'll talk about the surprising defending Eastern Conference champions in the Miami Heat. They went on a amazing bubble run, very reminiscent of March Madness. We obviously didn't get March Madness last year, but their run to the finals was so unexpected. It reminded us of March Madness. But in the regular season, they were the 5th best team in the East, finishing at 44-29. But this was a team actually going to last season. I didn't have them making the playoffs, so they obviously surpassed my expectations by a lot. And it's an interesting team here going into this season. There's a lot of people that are really high on them, a lot of people that think they were just a fluke. So I'm interested to hear what you think about that in a second. But in terms of additions, they drafted Precious Achiuwa, who was a guy who some people really liked. He seemed like he dropped down draft boards as the season went on last year in college. But he still is a solid prospect. They got him later in the draft, later in the first round. They added Avery Bradley, who was on the Lakers last year, and then Mo Harkless. In terms of subtractions, Jay Crowder, Solomon Hill, Derrick Jones Jr. I think they're really going to miss the leadership Jay Crowder brought to the table, as well as Derrick Jones Jr.'s energy, either in the starting lineup or off the bench. But in terms of the 3 keys to watch, I mentioned it there at the top. The big question with this team is, was the bubble just a fluke? Is this team a legitimate title contender year in and year out? Or was that just kind of an aberration and they're more of like a 5, 6, maybe even a 7 seed team? What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I think they're still a contender. I think you're a little bit lower on me. I'm still excited to hear what you have to say, but I still think this is a team that didn't lose. I know Jay Crowder's a decent piece. They didn't lose a whole lot. I think getting Avery Bradley and Mo Harkless will make up for Jay Crowder. He was basically just a spot-up shooter. They got plenty of those on their roster. I think I think they're a good team. I think maybe they're the 3 or I think they're right with the Sixers for me. I think they're above the Celtics. I think maybe they're the 4th best team in the conference in my opinion. I think maybe it was a little bit fluky that they made it all the way to the finals, but when you get hot in the playoffs, you can do anything. So I think it could be a potential for them to do it again this year. I mean, they got a lot of players that are really streaky. You look at guys like Tyler Herro, Duncan Robinson, which we're going to talk about going forward, guys like that aren't exactly the superstar on the team, but guys that can get hot. I mean, Robinson and Herro can both prove they can basically take over games from beyond the arc. 2 of the best spot-up shooters in this league and catch-and-shoot guys that we got in the league now. And I'm excited to this is another team that I'm very excited to watch. I think they're more fun to watch than a team like the Celtics, maybe even more fun to watch than the Sixers because they're not really one. It's similar to the Raptors with a little bit more star power. Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler. I don't think either one of those guys are an absolute number 1 top option, top 10 player, but they're right on the outside. I think they're right in that Jason Tatum range where they're borderline superstars, both of them, Butler and Adebayo. And Adebayo continues to get better, which I'm really excited for him. So I think they're still a legit contender. I do think so.
Man, I'm surprised you're this high on them. I mean, I like them. They have a lot of. I like Jimmy Butler. I got the Jimmy Butler Bulls jersey up here back here. I like Jimmy Butler. I love Duncan Robinson from his days in Michigan. Now, obviously in the NBA, love watching him. This is a team that I really loved watching in the bubble. They were just a really gritty, fun bunch to watch, and I hope they're successful. But I just don't. I look at this team, I look at their roster, and I just see them as like a 3 seed at best. And I'm more in the 4 or 5 range. I don't think they're better than the Nets, the Bucks, the Sixers, and I think them and the Celtics are pretty comparable. So not too off from what you were saying, but I think I'm definitely more on the side of the bubble was more of a fluke.
You don't see as much of the ceiling as I do, is what it kind of. I see a realm where they could be the 1 seed. I think their ceiling is the best team I actually do. I think they could potentially be the 1 seed. I'm not saying it's super likely, but I think their floor is around the 4 or 5 spot, and I really do think they are a legitimate contender. Maybe not the favorites. Like I said, I already think the Nets, the Bucks, definitely better. But I think after that, I mean, the Sixers, maybe things don't work out. They got a new head coach.
Yeah.
That we already talked about in our breakdown of the Atlantic Division, which was very entertaining. Go check that out. But this one as well, I think the Heat, clearly the best team in this division, clearly a title contender at worst, definitely a conference final contender.
Yeah, they definitely have the continuity, and that'll help in a weird season like this. Jimmy Butler's a really good leader, as well as being a really good player on the court. And if a Tyler Hero proves the bubble wasn't a fluke and develops more, if Bam can repeat his stellar last season, if Robinson can become more than just a shooter, if Chris Dunn can improve a little bit, I guess I could see them being in the 1 seed. I think they have a very high floor, just a low ceiling as well, and I think that's why they level out at the 3, 4, 5 range for me. But we mentioned them a ton with Hero, with Dunn, Adebayo, and Robinson. They're main young pieces, along with Jimmy Butler. It sounds like you think they're going to continue to develop. Is that right?
Yes, I absolutely think this core is going to just continue to get better, especially Bam Adebayo. I think he could extend his range starting as soon as this year, extend his range out to the 3-point line. I think that's the next step he can take. He's already an awesome passer. He's already one of the best passing big men in the league after a guy like Jokic. And I actually think Adebayo, this is a bold take, he might be the best center in the NBA, in my opinion, all around. I think there's an argument. I think he's better than Embiid already. I already do. I think Embiid's a little bit overrated. I think he's definitely better than a guy like Cat. I think the only guy their argument really is there for is Jokic, and I value his defense maybe even more. So I think I'm going to take him as my top center in the league going into this year. I think he takes another step offensively. He's already besides a guy like Gobert, who offers little to nothing on offense, is the best defensive center in the league, in my opinion. I think he's just going to continue to get better with age and experience, and I think the bubble was huge for me. He really stepped up for me. I'm just a huge Bam Adebayo fan. He grows on me every year.
Yeah, man, you're all in on the Heat. I did not know you were all in on the Heat. I mean, Adebayo, he's definitely a top 5 guy. I don't know. I wouldn't go as far as say he's the best, but yeah, he's definitely a top 5 guy. And yeah, I mean, you're kind of convincing me that they might be better because I think these guys can definitely develop, but I don't know. I still just see them as a 2-3 seed at best, but they're definitely not gonna. They're definitely better than the Raptors. I don't see them dropping to below the 5 seed. And I think, yeah, I could see it. I can see where you're coming from for sure. I think the more interesting thing about this team, though, is there another move on the horizon? They have been involved in some James Harden trade rumors. They haven't been as prevalent as the Nets or the Sixers rumors, but they're there. They're there. Whenever a guy's on the market, they are in the rumors to acquire this guy because Miami's such a great basketball town to play in. So do you think that maybe it sounds like you think the Heat are already a bona fide title contender. Do you think another move may be on the horizon, or do you think that the team that's constructed the way it is right now, they don't need to make any moves? They're gonna do what they did last year and make it all the way to the finals and take it one step further and maybe even win a championship?
See, it's tough because I do like their core a lot. Obviously, getting a guy like James Harden would be a massive improvement. I know they've been right in the thick of things with the rumors, but I don't really know what they're going to give up for a guy like Hero. I mean, a guy like Harden. I know Hero was in some conversations, but like he's not a superstar or anything. Like he's a good quality piece. But I think maybe some of the hype around him is getting a little bit too extreme. I don't think he's overrated because I don't think he's good enough to be overrated yet, and he's too young as well. But he obviously shows flashes of being great, and he definitely does. Like he could be a star potentially, but he's definitely not anywhere near that yet. And I don't think he's like some huge asset either. I think he's still got some work to do. He still shows inconsistency, can get hot. But they're not even willing to give up a guy like Duncan Robinson, who was an undrafted free agent. Obviously, he's a key cog of this offense, but I don't really – what are you going to give up if you're not going to give up – if you're only giving up Hero, you're not going to get a guy like – they want stars back, and they're obviously not giving him Adebayo, and I don't see why Butler would be interested in going to the Rockets when he's already made what seems like – I know Butler isn't the easiest guy to play with, but it looks like he's made a very good home with the Miami Heat and really fits into their culture with a guy like Goran Dragic, who we haven't even talked about, a decent point guard at that, and they have the depth to do it. I don't really see – them making a big splash move just because I don't know what they're giving up.
I mean, I agree with you there. I think that if they wanted to get a guy like Harden, have to be like a Hero, Dunn, and a bunch of picks. And if you look at some of the other offers out there, the Nets, I like the LeVert, Dinwiddie, Jared Allen, and picks. deal more. I like the Ben Simmons deal with the Sixers way more. Yeah, and I don't see that happening. But we talked about during our Central Division episode where maybe a team trades for either Victor Oladipo or Miles Turner or both. Maybe the Heat are one of those teams. If it seems like you think they're ready to go, who cares? They're going to be a really good team. If they end up more on how I think they will, maybe they need to make a move to get better. I think that maybe a move with Indiana to get either one of Oladipo or Turner, or maybe both of them, could really improve their team. And maybe they just have to give up Hero and some picks, Olynyk and some picks. Who knows? And you get a guy like Oladipo who is a solid player. Hopefully he recovers from the injury. Miles Turner is a solid player as well. I feel like he would really blend in well with the Heat culture. That's a potential move, because I do think if they really want to repeat what they did last year and be a team that's competing for the title, I do think they need to make another move. But
I don't think they need to, but they could. I could see it happening.
Yeah.
Sure, but I do like them this year. I think they're. I'm a little bit more. This is a team I'm a little higher on than you are. I think
for sure.
Or maybe a little bit higher than me with the Sixers. I still think they're going to be good. I think the Heat might be better than the Sixers. I think they're probably my 3 seed. That's what I would put them at.
Yeah, you're right. I just don't see that happening unless Hero, as we mentioned there, unless their young core really take a significant step. I just don't see them being more than the 4 seed. I think I don't see them being more than the 4 seed, and I don't see them being less than the 5 seed. I think they have a very high ceiling, very low, or very high floor, very low ceiling.
That's fair.
It's just how I feel, but they're definitely going to be an interesting team to watch. They're definitely going to be a fun team to watch. A lot of good players on this team, a lot of likable players, I feel like. But jumping to our next team here with a team that's just not interesting, quite frankly. But hey, who knows?
Not interesting potential playoff team.
We got the Orlando Magic and Chris. Although they are very uninteresting, how would you break them down for us a little bit?
Yeah, lucky me, I get to break down the Orlando. I got the Pacers earlier. I got the Orlando Magic. It's been a thrilling bunch of teams. No, I got to do the Pistons as well, so that a very interesting offseason for them. But they did get Cole Anthony, which is a guy that has some upside for sure. Dwayne Bacon is an addition, and then Chuma Okeke, I think I'm saying his name right. An interesting rookie as well. And then only really lost DJ Augustine and Wesley Iwundu. Not really anything noteworthy on either end. 3 keys to watch, and we'll jump right into the first one. I mean, Markelle Fultz just got the massive contract. I don't remember the exact figures because it kind of just came out today, and I haven't really had a lot of time to look at it. But just with the major extension, it's interesting. But is he really a starting level guard caliber player? I'll answer my own question first. I mean, I think he is, but I think he belongs in that Colin Sexton tier. Maybe he's a little bit worse than him right now, but I think that's where he fits in. He's just a guy in the starting rotation. I don't think he doesn't provide anything in terms of 3-point shooting. He's a good playmaker, a good defender, can finish around the rack, has absolutely no shooting ability whatsoever. He's still a really poor shooter, shoots around 30% from the 3-point line. He is improving from, he's obviously a number 1 lure. He was supposed to be awesome. He's supposed to be a great player. He's clearly not that. He's a bust from those expectations, but he's not a total flunk of a pick. He's a guy that he's more of a reclamation project. He's starting to turn his career around. So I think he is fixing his legacy, but it'll never reach what the hype was. The hype was unreal for Markelle Fultz. I wasn't as into him as other people were, but I know people around the league really thought this dude was going to be a superstar. He's clearly not that. Is really the jumper and the injuries have really contained him, and he's not a Ben Simmons level playmaker. He's just a solid playmaker. So he's got a chance. He's still a young player. They reward him with the long deal. See what he can be. He's got upside. But let's hear what you have to say. Do you think he's an all-star at any point? You think he'll ever be an all-star?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of reversing roles here. I think I was definitely more pessimistic on the Heat, but I'm definitely more optimistic, not about the Magic, but at least about Markelle Fultz. I think he's a good defender. He showed some definite strides last year. And I think if he can evolve the shot, I think Orlando is the best possible landing spot for him, because Philadelphia didn't work out there. The media was all over him. Then he goes to a team like Orlando where there's like next to zero national coverage on them, and he can just work out his kinks. I think last year was a very nice first step, and I think he can continue to fix his legacy, as we have there on the key to watch, into this year. And I think he could be a very solid. I don't think he's going to be as good as people expect him to be out of the draft with the first overall pick. However, I still think he has the chance to be a top 10, top 15 type of point guard in the league. which is obviously above league average, and just be solid both ends of the floor. He needs to improve the offense, obviously, but I can see that being something he improves on this year and being a really nice player here for the Magic for years to come. And that's at least how I feel. But do you have anything else you wanted to add about Fultz, or do you want to jump into Aaron Gordon talk?
Yeah, I'll just jump right into the Aaron Gordon stuff. I mean, we got right here. We got, will Gordon ever take the next step? And I'm going to answer that. I'm kind of out of Aaron Gordon as I don't think he's anything close to a star. I think he's just a guy. He's similar to Markelle Fultz in my opinion, a little bit older, a little bit more proven, but a guy that Fultz, I definitely think there's potential for him to improve a lot. I think Gordon is just a guy. He's a scorer. He gets robbed in the dunk contest. Other than that, they're really to talk about. I know he plays for the Orlando Magic, doesn't get as much national coverage, doesn't even get as much attention from a guy like me as well, I'm a diehard NBA fan, but I don't have time to watch every single game. So the Magic are a team I rarely ever get to watch. I watched them a little bit in the bubble because I was really into it, didn't have a whole lot to do. We got to see a little bit of Markelle Fultz, but Gordon wasn't healthy for any of the bubble, so I didn't really watch a whole lot of him. But throughout his career, I mean, I've just kind of been disinterested in him. I don't know. It's nothing against the dude. He's just a guy in the league. I don't really think he's ever going to be anything special. I don't think he'll ever be a bum either until he's old enough or whatever. Like, I don't think he's just going to fall off now. I think he's going to average around his 15 to 18 points per game, be okay from three, be kind of non-existent defensively, make some highlight plays with the dunking, get hot every once in a while. But he's just kind of a guy that you put in your rotation. You hope he can carry you every once in a while, I guess.
Completely agree. Could not agree more with your take right there. I think Gordon, with his dunking ability, sometimes he seems like a funny guy off the court. He seems like a really interesting, cool, goofy guy. Yeah. People tend to think he's better than he really is.
Yeah.
But I think he's just a solid rotation guy, and he's another guy whose name has popped up in some trade rumors.
Yeah.
I think he would benefit immensely from getting traded away from Orlando. I believe he was taken with a top 5 pick. He's only 25. But it feels like he's been in the league for like 15 years.
It feels like he's been in the league for 25. It feels like he's like 28, 29 years old. And so he's got a chance. If he gets traded, I think he has a chance to potentially develop. But I think if he stays in Orlando, it's kind of a complacency thing with him. I think he's just going to be kind of the same level. Yeah. Not a scrub, not anything that you're going to consider for an all-star. Just kind of a decent player.
Yeah. Exactly. I think we honestly very similar to with Victor Oladipo, who was also started his career with the Magic, is where he had a lot of pressure accumulated with him being a top 5 pick in the draft, couldn't handle it. Then he gets traded to a new team. A change of scenery really helps him out. And I think Aaron Gordon, the same thing could happen for him if that happens. But even if that does happen, I agree. I don't think his ceiling is much higher than 15 to 18 points a game, gets you some rebounds, it gives you some highlight plays, put some butts in the seats, but doesn't offer a whole lot else there. And very similar to Gordon, will he ever make this next step? You could say that about the entire team. Will the Magic ever make the next step? Can Orlando be more than the 7th seed? And I saw you shake your head no. I'll start off with this one. I 100% agree. I don't think they can be more than the 7th seed. I look at their roster, and I think they're very similar. They're like a worse version of the Pacers. Is they don't have like a ton of like brutal players. I think they'd be much more interesting if Jonathan Isaac wasn't out for the entire season. But they got Al-Farouq Aminu, who isn't terrible. Cole Anthony, I really like Cole Anthony. I think he's looked really good in the preseason. I think he could be one of those guys who's a better NBA player than he is a college player. I think he could be really interesting. If he takes the next step, maybe they could be a 6th seed. Then you got Mo Bamba, Michael Carter-Williams, James Ennis, like not terrible guys, right? There's just
a lot of reclamation projects.
Nikola Vucevic, Terrence Ross. They got some decent players. But yeah, the 7th seed is their ceiling, and that might even be being generous because the bottom half of the East, the teams that they were better than last year, they got better. The Wizards got better. I know the Hornets got better. The Hawks got better. The Pistons got better. The Bulls got better. And the Magic, there's just not a lot here that excites me. But what do you think?
Yeah, for me, I think Orlando is actually on the outside looking in. I mean, you look at a team that really didn't make a lot of moves in the offseason. I think this is a team that is in that. I honestly really think they're in that Pistons tier of like teams. I mean, Pistons with the healthy Blake Griffin back. I mean, look at the Bulls with a young core, adding some more talent to that core as well. I think the Magic are in that. They're a lot different, but they're in that tier of teams. I think this is a more proven team, but they're not really proven to be good. They're just an average an average team in the East, which is a below average team in the NBA because the West is considerably better. So this is a team I think they really need to start rebuilding. I don't think Vooch is a number one option. I think he's more of a number two guy. He's a good center, quality center, probably right around maybe the back end of the top 5. Maybe you kind of consider him at 6 or 7, but there's an argument to be made that he's a top 5 center. He's solid, but they're not building their team around a top 6 center that is limited defensively and not really a rim protector. He's more of just an offensive threat, averages 20 a game. And he's taken some minor improvements. Did look really good in the bubble, but like you said, we got to see it. Let's see it to believe it in the regular season before we clamor him as some generational talent at the center position. Because he was very good in the bubble, but in the case of somebody's got to score the ball for this team, and that's why also a guy like Terrence Ross is very relevant because he's a good scorer but doesn't provide anything else to the team. And I'm fine with it. I'm not trashing a guy like Terrence Ross, but I don't think he would be considered to be such a good player if he wasn't on the Magic. He's just an inefficient scorer.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm happy you said that because I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, well, the Magic made the playoffs last year, so you have to chalk them into the playoffs this year. What does that even mean? Like the rest of the East got better. And I know they're going to play well on defense because they do have a solid defense, but I think the loss of Jonathan Isaac will definitely hurt them. And if I were them, I would. They remind me of the Pistons from a couple of years ago, where they're just a mediocre team with no real optimism, but they're not that bad, but they're not great. I would trade Gordon, Vucevic, Terrence Ross, any other veteran, and just build around Anthony, Bamba, Isaac, and Fultz. That would be and just see where you go from there. Get some high picks, but not a very exciting team. But I think they definitely. Odds are they'll probably find their way into the play-in tournament because they will have a solid defense and they have a solid roster, even if there's not a whole lot of exciting pieces for sure. But that's way too much time spent on the Magic. Yeah. So we'll jump to the next team here. The Charlotte Hornets, who you mentioned, you kind of teased it in our part 2 episode when we talked about the Central Division, that you weren't super high on the Hornets. This is a team that's gained, pardon the pun, a lot of buzz here in the offseason, mainly because they added LaMelo Ball. I remember hearing about this kid back when I was like a junior or sophomore in high school when he was putting up 93 points or whatever that was when he was 16. So this is a guy, he's had a lot of buzz around him for a very long time. We finally get to see him in the NBA. The Hornets took him with the 3rd overall pick in the draft. So a lot of positive momentum here. They also had a Gordon Hayward, who I believe is currently injured, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be too serious. He hopefully will not miss too much time. And they also drafted Vernon Carey Jr. In terms of subtractions, they lost Nicholas Batum. Finally gave him a monster contract a few years ago and just never lived up to it. Willie Hernan-Gomez and then Dwayne Bacon. So not a whole lot of subtractions there, but key to watch, number 1, worth the hype, expectations for LaMelo, and to a lesser extent, the Hornets. This is a team that a lot of people are expecting to maybe sneak into the play-in tournament, maybe even into the 7th or 8th seed of the playoffs. So do you think LaMelo, I think I kind of already understand your feelings on this question, but do you think LaMelo and to a greater extent the Hornets are worth the hype they're getting here in the offseason?
Well, so I've kind of a mixed emotions about the Charlotte Hornets. There's a lot of players on this team that I do like. I think they have some talent. I think the future. This isn't a Knicks situation they're not as bad as the Knicks. They're not as bad as the Cavs. I think those teams are boring and uninteresting. This team is very interesting. There's no doubt about it. They have a ceiling of maybe potentially sneaking into at least the play-in tournament, if not the playoff. I personally think they're on the outside looking in, and there's some reasons why. I think the expectations for LaMelo is that he's a lock to win the Rookie of the Year, and I don't think that. I think LaMelo's a very good player, but he's also super young and he didn't play with a lot of these guys or whatever. He's played overseas, which obviously was dropping buckets all the time. But it's different here. I think you've even seen in the preseason he struggled with the shot early on. I think it's going to be the case early on. I think he's going to get better as the season goes along. Could win the Rookie of the Year for sure. Definitely could win it. But I think there's going to be a learning, some growth problems. I think there's going to be some development. It's not going to be he's not going to instantly come in and score 25 a game like a guy like Luka did. He's not that level of player, but I think with some development, I think he could end up being an all-star caliber point guard eventually. Not this year, maybe not even next year. I think in a couple years, I think we're going to be starting to be talking about him developing into his own and becoming a star in this league. But I think it's going to take a little more time than other people do.
Yeah, I respect that. You're not alone in that take either. I think a lot of people are a little bit lower on LaMelo. I think he is going to be the Rookie of the Year this year simply because of all the hype around him, and I think he's going to get so much opportunity, and they're basically just giving him the keys and saying, "Here you go." And I mean, he actually there are some talk that he might come off the bench behind Terry Rozier and Devontae Graham.
Oh Jesus, that's the reason why I'm not as high on this team.
I don't see that happening. Hopefully, for the Hornets' sake, I think LaMelo. Not only is he a better player, but he also you want to see what you got in this guy, right? I think simply from a volume standpoint, I think LaMelo should have a good enough case in terms of the stats. Sure. Even if he is a great shooter, which that is definitely a concern, but he can rebound. He can. He's a great playmaker. He can finish at the rim. He's almost like a slightly shorter, worse version of Ben Simmons, in my opinion. Because I think he can also bring something on the defensive end. But it seems like he's not locked in all the time, but he has the athleticism and the talent to be solid defensively as well. So Let's talk about key number 2 here before we jump into key number 3, which is will they be in the playoffs? So can Hayward regain his Utah form? When we put this key down, I thought he could. The fact that he already got a little nick here and is banged up a little bit before the preseason even is over, that definitely concerns me. But I think if he can stay healthy, I think he could regain at least some of his Utah form. I mean, he was like an all-star there and got a massive contract because of his performance in Utah. I don't think he might never be that type of player again, but I think he could become really, really close. And he could be the perfect scorer off ball, maybe take away some of the playmaking duties from a guy like LaMelo. And if that's the case, I think the Hornets could be a playoff team. But what do you think about Hayward?
Yeah, I'm going to address 2 and 3 at the same time. I'm going to lay it all out for you, and then you can conclude, and we'll move on to the next team here because I have a lot of thoughts here. I'm just going to get them all out there. So, guys that I do like on this team, and it's a duo. One of them a little bit of a homer, Miles Bridges, former Michigan State player. I think he's a player that needs to emerge and can emerge. I think he's a talented player. The other player is P.J. Washington. These two,
I love P.J. Washington.
Each other, they both kind of look alike. They play very differently. P.J. Washington may get some run at the center, and I'm excited to see what that is. I've seen a lot of hype about him being a center. I do like Washington a lot. I think he can run the floor well. He can shoot the 3 ball. A little bit of work to do on the defensive side, but he's got the length. He's got some size. Miles Bridges, same thing. He's an athletic monster, offensive freak. He can shoot the 3 ball.
You're right. They do play a lot alike. They do very similar skill sets. You're right.
Yeah, they're both. I mean, they even look alike. To be honest, I literally saw something about Miles Bridges complaining about how once you search up his name, P.J. Washington comes up.
I didn't know about that. I didn't hear that.
Oh, it's I mean, they do look very similar. They play very similar. I like both players a lot. I think they need to step up a little bit more for this team to be a potential fringe playoff team. The problem is that it just continues. Hornets history, throw money at mediocre players like Al Jefferson. And this is continuing now. Not pay guys like Kemba Walker, but I mean, Gordon Hayward's a fine player, but he's not some #1 star player. And yet, well, he may regain some of his Utah form. He was still okay with the Celtics when he was on the floor. He was clearly not the guy there that they thought they got. And I think Hayward is going to average around 15 to 20 points and just kind of be like a Nikola Vucevic, just meaningless scoring. I mean, it's like for a mediocre team. I think that's kind of what it is. But 2 other guys I want to talk about that they throw money at. Terry Rozier. I mean, one, he's whatever. He's in that Colin Sexton tier, just a guy that maybe belongs as a starter, but not a good starting point guard. I even prefer Sexton over him, but I think they way overpaid for him. He's just kind of another guy. And the other guy is Devontae Graham, who I think is one of the more overrated players in the NBA. Obviously, he can score the ball, doesn't do anything else. He's a turnover machine, and he's purely a volume scorer. He shoots the ball I think he might have had the most missed shots in the NBA last year, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe before the bubble or something. I'm not sure. Maybe that stat changed. There was a point in the year where he had the lowest field goal percentage and then had the most missed shots in the league, even over a guy like James Harden, who had a lot more volume than him, even though he is a high volume scorer. So I'm laying it all out for you. That's why I'm not as high on this team, but they are going to be fun to watch because there are some pieces that I do like. LaMelo Ball, obviously, you can't not like him. I do think he's going to be good. I think it's going to take a little more time. And then Miles Bridges, P.J. Washington, 2 guys that I'm interested in to see their development this year. And then the 3 veterans, if they are able to step up, which I'm doubting, even though they paid him a bag for all 3 of them, or 2 of them. Devontae Graham still hasn't gotten paid. But, it's going to be interesting to see. I don't think they're going to be trash, but I don't think they're going to be a playoff team.
I think Graham and Rozier as like the second, as they can combine to be the second guard behind LaMelo. I think they can be a solid team. And then Hayward, if he can stay healthy, I think he can be solid. A lot of ifs there. And I do think Bridges, I'm obviously maybe my anti-Michigan State bias is showing here, but I'm not as high on Bridges as a lot of other people are, but the potential's still there. I really like PJ Washington though. If both of those guys can develop more, take a next step, I think they could be a playoff team. And I think even if that doesn't happen, they're not going to be as bad as the Cavs or the Knicks. I agree with you. They're right in that tier with the Bulls, the Pistons. Depending on how you feel about the Hawks, maybe I'm a little higher on the Hawks than I think most, and the Magic as well. I think they're right in that tier. I don't think they're going to be terrible, but they're going to be in the mix for the play-in tournament for sure.
Yeah, no, I don't really have much to add. I think they definitely could be. I'm not trashing this team. They're going to be fun to watch. I'm going to tune in. This isn't a Cleveland Cavaliers team. I know I keep going back to them and trashing them. It's not even a New York Knicks thing. They're boring too. This is going to be a fun team to watch for sure. They're more in the Chicago Bulls tier. I just don't think they're as good. I think the Bulls have some more proven talent, and I think the Hornets are hoping to kind of be the Bulls, which I don't think they're going to be there this year. But I think next year we're going to be I'm going to be a little more optimistic on them. We just got to see how these pieces all play out.
And what they do with the draft next year. And I'm really excited to see if LaMelo is actually any good. I mean, like I said, we've been hearing about this kid for like 5-6 years now, and now he's finally in the NBA, and it's going to be really entertaining to see if he's actually worth all the hype and can be a good player. Because I think he's at least going to be entertaining, like you said. Even if they don't win a lot of games, even if LaMelo makes mistakes, they're still going to be fun to watch. But we'll jump in here now to the Washington Wizards, another team that I think is going to be really fun to watch. But Chris, why don't you walk us through this team?
I mean, yeah, obviously the major moves, Russell Westbrook making the trade, getting rid of John Wall, which I'll just group them both together because they were in the same trade. Going to be interesting to see, and we'll obviously talk about that going forward. But another Robin Lopez, pretty uninteresting. Denny Avdija, very interesting, a rookie that I'm pretty high on. I think he's going to be very talented. And then obviously another Michigan State homer, but could be a potentially a piece for the future in Cassius Winston. I do like him. But attractions, not really anything other that noteworthy besides John Wall. I mean, Ian Mahimi, he's been there forever. Shabazz Napier, Gary Grant, Admiral Schofield. This was a team that, when they just really weren't that good. I mean, they were kind of just there. I don't know. Bradley Beal obviously is a superstar. I do really like Bradley Beal, but I'm just going to jump into the first one. I think the Wizards did not get that much better by adding Westbrook instead of John Wall. I think they're pretty similar. Obviously, Westbrook a little bit better. They lost some draft capital. I think they're pretty much they're the same team they were last year. I'm not really that high on them either. I'm a little bit. I think you're going to be a little higher on them than I am. I do love Bradley Beal as much as I love him. It's sometimes someone has to score the ball, and Russ / John Wall aren't the most. They can score the ball, but they're not the most efficient scorers. They need a guy that can consistently make shots. Bradley Beal is that guy. I do love him. I think he's in between the 20 and 10 range in players in the NBA for me. One of the best shooting guards in the league, despite it being one of the weaker positions. He is an alpha guy that can be a number one guy on a team, but I think he's only a number one guy on mediocre to bad teams. I don't think he's someone that you can build a franchise around, and unless you have a lot of talent around him as well, I guess, if that makes sense. But what do you think about this pairing?
I think Westbrook is a significant upgrade over John Wall. I mean, I know John Wall has looked good in the preseason so far, and it's great to see. But even at his best, he wasn't like Westbrook was last year. I mean, I know Westbrook had the injuries. He was brutal in the bubble. But before that, people were talking about Westbrook playing the best basketball of his career. And they were talking about him as a potential MVP candidate. And I think he made an All-NBA team last year. So for me, I mean, I think he's definitely an upgrade over John Wall. And I think Bradley Beal is one of the most underrated players in the league. I think he's one of the best shooting guards in the league. I think he can be a really good number 2 option on a really good NBA team. And I think I look at some. I mean, so I'll jump in here to the emergence of the young supporting cast. I look at some of these guys. They drafted Denny. They got Isaac Bonga. I forgot how you pronounce his name. Davis Bertans, who's not super young but still a solid player. Troy Brown Jr., Thomas Bryant, Rui Hachimura. They have a lot of solid guys. Mo Wagner, and Cassius Winston, the Michigan State connection right there. They got a lot of solid players, I think, and a lot of young guys around the veteran Westbrook and Beal. Beal's not super old. Westbrook's getting up there in age a little bit though. And I think if Westbrook could stay healthy, if they can even just get a few of those young guys to emerge. And personally, I really like Rui. I really like Denny. I really like Thomas Bryant. And obviously, I'm biased. I like Mo Wagner as well. I think those 3 guys, or 4 guys, excuse me, can really be really good for this team coming in, can be a great supporting cast around Westbrook and Beal. And as long as Westbrook can stay healthy, I think he could sneak into All-NBA consideration again. And I think the Wizards are a bona fide playoff team. If I'm being honest, I actually like them more than the Pacers. I think they're going to be a 7 seed.
Really?
I like this team. I like this team.
I will say I did kind of forget about some of these younger guys. I do really like guys like Thomas Bryant and Troy Brown. I think Troy Brown's an underrated player as well. And I do agree Bradley Beal is underrated, but I still don't think he's a top 10 player in the league. I think he's in between that 10 to 20 range. You can make an argument for him anywhere in that. I think he's under guys like Jason Tatum. Definitely Jason Tatum for sure. I don't know why I was going to compare him to other guys. I can't really think of anybody else. But they do have some good young pieces. I think it's going to take some time for a guy like Denny Avdija to get really acclimated to. I think it's similar to LaMelo. I think it's going to take him. He may hit a stride in the second half of the year, but I think it is going to take some time for him. I think he is going to be very good. Versus a guy like Obi Toppin, who is more NBA ready, in my opinion. I think he's ready to make an impact this year. Denny will make an impact, but I think there'll be some growing pains with him more than anything. And he is a good shooter. He's a good playmaker. He can pretty much do everything. Could be a potential another Kristaps Porzingis clone if everything pans out right for him. He does have a similar body type, similar skill set, but I think it's going to take another year personally. I think, like you said, I think they do. If Westbrook and Beal are able to mesh, if Westbrook is really that true significant upgrade from John Wall, which they didn't have last year, I did kind of not really consider that. They're probably going to make the playoffs, but I'm not super high on them. I think you're probably right that they're in the Pacers tier, but I'm more in on them next year when everything can get, just congruency, another year under the system. I think that's when they're going to hit their stride and be start sneaking into that top 6 consideration.
Yeah, so last year they were 25-47. They were the 9th seed in the East, so they were the 9th seed, but they missed out on the playoffs by quite a bit. And the big reason for that was they were a great offensive team. They just never played defense, and I think that's going to be the key for them to go into our final point here. Can Washington become a legitimate contender? The key for that is for them to improve defensively. And I think a lot of the reason that they didn't play well defensively was because they just weren't locked in. And I think Westbrook's thing, which is part of the reason why him and Harden clashed, was that Westbrook is locked in all the time, gives 155% all the time, whether he's I mean, during the bubble, he wasn't even playing, and he was like on the bench, screaming, taking his mask off, yelling at people, calling out plays. He is so intense and so in all the time. Which is why he's one of my most favorite players to watch in the league. I think he's going to bring an energy to this Wizards team. There's finally some juice with them. They feel like they've been going around in circles here the last few years. And I think the Wizards, I think they are definitely a playoff team. I think they will win the play-in tournament, and they will be the 7th seed in the Eastern Conference. Maybe even the 6th seed if one of those top 6 teams falls off a little bit. I really like this team.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair for sure. I mean, there's definitely there's a ceiling here. I think there's also a lower floor. So we'll have to see how it goes. But I'm ready to get into our final team. Yeah.
Fair enough. So the final team, another team that is right in there with that Wizards tier. I like the Wizards a little bit more than the Hawks, but they're still a really solid team. I mean, last year, a lot of people, they were like a dark horse, sexy playoff pick, but they were brutal last year, 20-47. 14th in the Eastern Conference. But they added a lot. They had one of the most active off seasons in the league. They added Bogdan Bogdanovic, Danilo Gallinari, Rajon Rondo. They drafted Onyeka Okongwu, got Chris Dunn, Tony Snell. And they lost just a lot of their moving parts. Just kind of the no offense, the scrubs they had on their team last year, and DeAndre Bembry, Vince Carter, Dwayne Dedmon, Skal Labissiere, Travion Graham, and Jeff Teague. So definitely improved a lot, in my opinion. But it revolves around their quote-unquote superstar in Trae Young. A lot of people seem to be crowning him as the next point guard, and he's just he was started the All-Star game last year, just an undeniable superstar. And there's other people that think he's a little bit overrated. So Chris, where do you fall in that camp? Do you think Trae is more overrated, or do you think he's a legit superstar already?
It's kind of a case of both, man. I mean, he's so good offensively, but yet I think he is a little bit overrated because I don't think he's an elite point guard. I think he more fits into the star, but I'd say he probably is a little bit overrated, but he's a very good point guard, obviously gifted scorer, like an off-brand Curry almost that could obviously.
I was going to say, that's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say he's a worse version.
I don't think anyone's considering better than a guy like Curry, a guy like Dame. I think he fits more into that, like, 4 to 7 range at the point guard position, maybe even a little bit lower than that. He's obviously getting better with every year. He's still horrible defensively, but he's also awesome on offense. So I mean,
Yeah.
you really crush him if he's doing well at least one thing. But I mean, I like him. I don't love him. I don't know. It's tough because he's still so young, and this team is so bad right now. But I think they made a lot of improvements around him, which we're kind of getting in number two, as we've been doing a lot, kind of blending them all together. They made a ton of moves in the offseason, adding multiple scoring wings, Bogdan and Danilo. Yeah, I mean, just whatever you want to call him. I mean, I know he's got a bunch of nicknames like Gallo. So, I mean, you got those two wing players that can both shoot the ball, provide some scoring punch, a veteran guard for him that maybe will help him with his defense a little bit.
Yep.
And Rondo, I think that's an underrated sign. And then a Kongwu to back up a guy like Capella, and then John Collins continuing. And I'm even getting into point three now when I'm talking. But John Collins I am extremely high on him. I think he is an awesome power forward / center. Probably going to play more of the power forward role, but it doesn't matter because he can stretch the floor. He can play some defense. He's an awesome scorer, good rebounder, even get an occasional shot block, even though he won't even need to do that with Clint Capella in there, getting boards and just blocking every shot in sight. I am excited. This is the team I was excited to talk about because I think they are going to be pretty good. I think this is a team that's going to make the playoffs and maybe sneak in and at least be a challenge for a team like the Bucks, a team like the Nets. I think they're going to score. They have some defense. I'm excited.
I mean, I was with you there till you said they have some defense. I mean, I don't see where the defense is coming from.
DeAndre Hunter's a good defender. Rondo.
Yeah, he's got to improve though. I mean, he looked. Yeah, Chris Dunn's a good defender. Rondo, he used to be a good defender. Now he's not as great of a defender as he's getting up there in age. But that's the big thing. I mean, I think Atlanta's big offseason payoff. I think that it will in terms of I think they're going to be a playoff team. I think they're as close to a lock as possible to making the play-in tournament. I do think they're almost in a tier of their own. I think they're better than the Bulls, Hornets, Pistons tier, but I also don't think they're they're maybe with the Magic. Like I think they're better than the Magic. But the Magic I think are also better. Maybe there's just a bunch of tiers. I think the Magic are better than the Pistons but they're also kind of, I don't know. It's the East. The bottom of the East is a mess. It's going to be fun to watch. But I think they're definitely going to make the play-in tournament. I think they could have a good shot at winning the play-in tournament, getting either the 7th or the 8th seed, and maybe putting some fear in a team like the Bucks or the Nets in a first-round series. And a big reason for that is I think Trae Young, he is a little bit overrated, but he's so electric offensively, as you said. I do have some concerns if he was just a volume scorer, was because last year we mentioned with Vucevic earlier, maybe someone just had to score, so Trae Young happened to score. I don't think that's the case. The big issue with him is defensively. I mean, he's got to lock in more defensively. And that's the big thing with him. I mean, even like Steph Curry, not a good defender by any means, but at least he's locked in. He's trying his hardest. With Trae, you couldn't say as much last year. And that's the big thing with him going forward. Another big question mark I have is they have a loaded front court right now with Capella, with Collins, with Gallinari, DeAndre Hunter's a small forward. They got so many big men. Okongwu.
They have a lot of talent in the front court.
A lot of guys in the front court. Even Bogdanovich is more of a small forward kind of a guy, but he can also play some shooting guard. They got a lot of big guys, and that does kind of concern me. Like who's going to play? Is there going to be some drama? It's just going to be interesting to see, I guess. But you touched on their improvement, so you think John Collins is really going to improve, right?
Yeah, I love John Collins. I think he's a rising star and will eventually develop. I think he might be the best player on this team. I mean, that's a hot take, but I really think John Collins is one of the more underrated players in this league. I think he's awesome, man. He's one of my favorite players. I don't know what it is. I've just always had a soft spot for him. I think he's really developing. I know he's had a couple off the field or off the court issues. I know he had the suspension he's in. But other than that, I really think I'm optimistic. I love his game. I think it translates well to being at least a star. I think he already is a borderline star, and I think eventually him and Trae Young could eventually develop into one of the best duos in the league. Just needs a little more defensively. I know Collins has been improving that position. I mean, I'm sure Trae Young has improved, but he's just still so bad. Well, I know you said they don't have a ton of defense, but you can mask a lot with an elite defensive center like Clint Capella inside, and that definitely is going to help. I know their perimeter defense probably not going to be great. DeAndre Hunter is a good defender, needs to improve. Cam Reddish as well has the tools to be a good defender. I mean, you're not getting much defense out of Gallo or Bogdan, but they're going to contribute offensively. This is a similar team to the Bulls, but I think they have more firepower and more star power. So I think they're going to be a playoff team, and I think they could be better than the Wizards too. Personally, I think, and potentially even the Pacers if the hype all aligns. I know I was more in on them than everybody else last year, even. So maybe that's just me trying to, maybe a year early. I predicted them to be a playoff team, not an awful team last year. But you have to factor in the John Collins suspension definitely hurt them. But I'm excited for them this year for sure.
Yeah, and honestly, the more we talk about it, I think the Pacers, this is obviously, we're not talking about the Pacers here, but I think they could be in danger of missing the playoffs. And I don't think they might not make the playoffs, because I like the Wizards and I like the Hawks more than them, especially if DeAndre Hunter and Cam Reddish, they showed flashes last year, but they got to be more consistent. And if they're good, along with all of the acquisitions they made in the offseason, I also really like John Collins. I'm kind of worried whether Clint Capella will steal some of his thunder here. But I think there's a world, Collins improved his outside jumper a little bit. There's a world where Collins and Capella could coexist, be a really good front court in the league. And it's very possible. I think this could be, it's going to be an entertaining team no matter what. I think they also have a chance to be really, really solid as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I'm interested. This will be another team that I'm going to be tuning into often on the League Pass just to see if I was right. I mean, we defer on some opinions. I'm a little bit higher on them. You're a little higher on the Hornets and the Wizards. It's going to be interesting to see who's right. And we did the same thing last year. It's always fun to see. And a week in, both of us are going to be dumb and we're both going to have bad takes. So I'm excited to see who comes out on top in this one for sure.
I'm definitely higher on the Hornets, but I also don't disagree with your take. So I would not put myself in the Hornets lovers camp, but I'm definitely higher on the Wizards. I will agree with you there. But I think that's it for this episode. Once again, we're the Zone Defense Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Spotify and Twitter at Zone Defense Pod, and be sure to search us on Apple Podcast as well. Smash that like button and be sure to drop a comment down below. Let us know your thoughts on these 5 teams we talked about today. If you agree with our predictions, if you disagree with our predictions, if you think the Wizards are going to be as good as I think they are, if you think the Hawks are going to be as good as Chris thinks they are, please let us know. We love reading them. And also check out our first 2 parts of our NBA preview series, and be sure to check our next 3 parts, which will cover the 3 divisions in the Western Conference. Check all those out, in addition to all of our NFL content. The playoffs are right around the corner, so we're going to have some more playoff coverage as we near January here. But yeah, thank you for listening to this episode, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.